Imagine ancient spiritual seekers walking through these vast forests, meditating quietly under trees, maybe finding profound peace in the stillness of a cave. It really paints this picture of serene detachment, doesn't it? Like truly unburdened by worldly concerns.
It's a powerful image.
But then what happens when a spiritual path, walked by these dedicated individuals, starts attracting more followers, when it grows into a full-fledged community? How do you keep that ideal going when you're not just one, but suddenly many?
That's exactly where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? Because it turns out even enlightenment needs a roof over its head.
Right?
And sometimes, that roof needs a door that actually stays on its hinges.
Absolutely. So today we're going to take a deep dive into an ancient Buddhist text, the Senāsanakkhandhaka, which is part of the Cullavagga. And our mission is really to uncover the whole story of how the practical, sometimes surprisingly mundane aspects of monastic life actually evolved.
Yeah, the nitty-gritty stuff.
Exactly. We'll explore how these early Buddhist monastics and their leader, the Buddha, faced these everyday challenges. I mean, everything from leaky roofs to, believe it or not, property disputes, and how all this led to a remarkably detailed system of rules and community administration.
It's just fascinating. It shows how even the most profound spiritual traditions are built on these incredibly pragmatic foundations.
So where does it begin? What were the really early days like?
Well, in the very earliest days, the monks really did embrace this free-spirited, wandering lifestyle. They were unattached, living off alms, finding shelter wherever they could, forests, under trees, caves, even cemeteries sometimes.
Wow, cemeteries.
Yeah. But what's often noted is the dignified and composed way they carried themselves, even when emerging from these, wilder spots.
They had this incredible presence, I suppose.
Exactly. And that presence didn't go unnoticed. In the city of Rajagaha, there was this very wealthy householder, Rajagakasiddhi. He saw these monks, observed their conduct, their serene way of life.
And he was impressed.
Deeply impressed. So much so that he made this groundbreaking offer. He wanted to build them permanent dwellings, proper buildings.
Okay, that's a big shift from wandering. How did the monks react?
Well, they were unsure. Did accepting permanent housing fit with their ascetic vows? So they consulted the Buddha.
And what was his take?
His response was surprisingly pragmatic, really. He actually approved 5 specific types of dwellings. There were viharas, which we'd call monasteries, upayogas, sort of like half cells or maybe small bungalows, pasadas, which were more like mansions or multi-storied buildings.
Mansions. Yeah.
Yeah, relatively speaking. Then hamiyas, which might mean attics or upper stories, and even guhas, natural caves, but now formally designated and accepted as dwellings.
So a range of options, basically.
Exactly. It signaled a move towards, community infrastructure, a settled life, at least for parts of the year.
And this Rajagakasiddhi, the donor, he didn't do things by halves, did he?
Not at all. The text says he built 60 viharas in a single day.
60 in one day. That's incredible.
Immense generosity. And crucially, he dedicated these buildings to the present and future Sangha from the 4 directions. Meaning they were communal property for all monks everywhere, for all time, not just for the locals or the current group.
That's a really important principle, setting that precedent early on.
Absolutely. And the Buddha himself expressed appreciation, highlighting the practical purpose of these shelters. He mentioned protection from the elements heat, cold, rain, but also from wild animals, mosquitoes, snakes, strong winds.
The basic necessities for survival, really.
Yes, but he also directly linked it to the spiritual goal. He emphasized that these dwellings provided suitable conditions for comfort, which allowed for deeper meditation, J2, and for developing insight, Vipassana.
So the practical always served the spiritual.
Precisely. But as you can imagine, building 60 monasteries overnight, even if they were simple structures, well, problems started cropping up pretty quickly.
Okay, here's where we start to uncover the whole story behind the rules, right? The problems.
Exactly. It wasn't just about the initial donation. It was about dealing with the unforeseen challenges. This led to this fascinating, iterative problem-solution cycle.
Like what? What was the first issue?
Doors. Or rather, the lack of them.
The first 60 monasteries didn't have doors.
Apparently not. So you can guess what happened. Snakes, scorpions, centipedes, they just wandered right in.
Yikes. Okay, yeah. Problem number 1.
So the monks reported this, and the Buddha, ever practical, approved simple doors, just basic closures.
Problem solved.
Not quite. The next issue was that these simple doors, probably made of wood or reeds, started getting eaten by rodents or termites, or they just fall off their hinges. maybe warp in the weather.
Ah, maintenance issues already.
Right. So this prompted the approval of actual hardware. Things like piaskaya backstoppers to keep the door in place, udukalika sockets for the door pivot, and even proper crossbars, utarpasaka, to secure them.
It's like an ancient version of going to the hardware store.
Kind of. And it kept going. Sometimes the doors were hard to pull open. So approval was given for an avignachanachita, basically a pulling hole, and an avinchanaraju, a rope to pull it with.
Okay, getting more sophisticated. What about locking them?
Security became an issue too. So various types of locks were approved, different designs like agavati, kapisusaka, suchika, gakka, and they could be made of different materials, iron, wood, even horn. And for extra security, a fastening pin, yantaka, and a securing bar, suchika.
It really shows this step-by-step response to real-world needs.
Absolutely. Necessity was driving the development of these rules. It wasn't abstract. It was about making monastic life workable and secure.
So doors sorted. What about the rest of the building? Walls, roofs?
Yeah, other issues came up there too. Grass roofs were common initially, but they were, well, not great insulation. Too hot in summer, too cold in winter.
Makes sense.
So the Buddha approved ulitavalidi. That means plastering the walls, probably with mud plaster, and whitewashing them. This would help regulate temperature and probably keep insects out better too.
And windows, did they have those from the start?
Apparently not always. Some early monasteries were built without windows, which meant they were dark, akakusa, and probably got pretty stuffy and smelly duganta.
Not ideal for meditation, I imagine.
Definitely not. So the Buddha approved 3 types of windows. Vidikavattapana, maybe a railing-style window, Jalavattapana, a lattice window, and Salakavattapana, possibly a window with bars or slats, just to get some light and air circulating.
Okay, another improvement. But did windows cause new problems? Seems to be a pattern here.
You guessed it. Bats, birds, maybe other small creatures started getting in through the open windows.
Of course.
So the next step was approving window nets, Vadapanakakalika, and then actual shutters, Vadapanakavaka and Vadapanabhisika, to close them properly when needed.
It really is fascinating how each solution kind of generated the next problem, requiring another adjustment. It shows a very responsive leadership, constantly refining things.
Exactly, and that adaptability extended to basic comfort too, or the lack of it initially.
What do you mean? Where were they sleeping?
On the ground, often directly on the earth floor inside the vihara.
Okay, that doesn't sound very comfortable. Or clean.
Precisely. Monks found their bodies and their robes were getting dirty. So this led to the approval of senāsanakkhandhaka, basically, grass mats to sleep on.
A bit better than bare earth.
A bit. But then, remember the termites and rodents that ate the doors.
Ah, they went for the mats, too.
You got it. Grass mats didn't last long. So the next step was approving a miche, which seems to have been a low, sturdy cot, probably just a basic frame.
Getting off the ground, literally.
Exactly. And then, for even more comfort, Bidalamanchaka were approved split bamboo beds, probably a bit more flexible and comfortable than a solid cot.
And did it stop there, or did the furniture options keep expanding?
They kept expanding. As different types of beds and chairs became available, or perhaps as needs were perceived, other specific types were approved. The text mentions things like masaraka, bunikabado, kulirapadakar, ahakabadoka, different designs and maybe different leg styles or construction methods. And piha, which means chairs or stools, were also approved.
So a whole range of basic furniture started to appear.
Yes, but this also led to another classic issue involving a particular group of monks.
Let me guess. The 6 group monks.
The very same, the Chavagya Bhikkhu. They seem to pop up whenever boundaries are being pushed.
What did they do this time?
They started sleeping on high beds. Really high ones, apparently.
And that was a problem.
It drew criticism from the lay followers. They observed the monks on these high beds and said it looked too much like householders enjoying sensual pleasures, too luxurious, not fitting the ascetic image.
Ah, the public perception issue again.
Right. So the Buddha initially prohibited high beds. Using one became a dukkata offense, which is a minor transgression, but still a rule against it.
Okay, so low beds only then.
Well, yes. But then came an interesting twist, a sort of counter incident.
Oh.
A monk who was sleeping correctly on a low bed got bitten by a snake.
Ouch. Okay, so low beds weren't entirely safe either.
Exactly. So this incident led the Buddha to modify the rules slightly. He approved the use of manyakapipataka, which are bed supports or short legs, to raise the beds off the ground slightly.
For safety from snakes and things.
Presumably, yes, but there was a strict height limit imposed, only 8 finger breadths high.
Ah, so finding that balance. Safety, yes, but still avoiding the appearance of luxury.
Precisely. It's this constant balancing act between practical needs, safety, and maintaining the monastic ideal.
What about bedding itself? Pillows, cushions?
Similar evolution there. The need for more comfortable bedding led to rules about stringing the beds, creating a supportive base. But then some monks used too much string, maybe making it overly elaborate.
Some more rules.
Yes, rules for a specific grid pattern for stringing the beds to standardize it and prevent excess.
And pillows.
Pillows came about through resourcefulness. Rags, Cullavagga, were approved for making pillows, silimikai. And if they had cotton mattresses, tulika, they could unravel the cotton to use as filling.
What kind of fillings?
The text mentions tree cotton, vine cotton, silk cotton, basically. Natural plant fibers readily available.
Sensible. Any controversies with pillows? I feel like the 6-group monks must be involved.
You know them well. They started using akarikani half-body pillows, like bolsters maybe.
And the lay people complained again.
They did. Same criticism to luxurious, like householders. So the Buddha prohibited those large pillows, allowing only head-sized pillows. Again, keeping things simple and modest.
It's amazing how much the lay community's perception shaped these rules.
Definitely. The Sangha relied on their support, so maintaining respect was crucial. And speaking of resourcefulness, there's a neat rule about mats. After big festivals, like those held in Rajagaha, mats used by the public would often be discarded.
Leftover mats.
Yeah. The Buddha approved the monks collecting and using these discarded mats. 5 types are mentioned: wool, cloth, bark, grass, and leaf mats.
Wow. Recycling in ancient India.
Pretty much, making use of what was available. But as they accumulated more communal property mats, bedding protecting it became important.
How so?
Well, fabric covers were approved for the mats, probably make them last longer or keep them cleaner. But then rules were needed to keep the covers attached to the beds or chairs fastened properly so they wouldn't get lost or damaged.
Practical stuff. What about theft? Was that an issue?
Apparently, yes. People started carrying away bed covers. So various practices were approved to mark monastic property. Things like sun-drying them, patron, maybe making them less appealing. Also marking them for badakama, perhaps meaning for mealtime use, or belonging to the community supply. And even creating a hathavalakama, a simple hand mark on the wall nearby, maybe to visually claim items in a particular area.
Fascinating. An early system for asset management and loss prevention.
You could say that, yeah. It all evolved from need.
Okay, so we've covered individual dwellings, furniture, bedding. What about the monastery as a whole? The shared spaces, the appearance?
Right, moving beyond the individual cell. Aesthetics and decorum mattered for the whole complex. Monastic buildings needed to reflect their spiritual purpose.
So not just functional, but looking the part too.
Exactly. The Buddha approved whitewashing, blackening with soot perhaps, and using red earth finishes for the walls. These were apparently common practices for religious buildings at the time, so it helped identify them as sacred spaces.
Were there specific techniques for this?
Yes, surprisingly detailed. To make sure the paints and plaster stuck properly, techniques using husk dust mixed in, fine clay, mustard flour, even beeswax or oil as binders were approved. It suggests a real concern for quality and durability.
They were building things to last.
They were. But, of course, aesthetics could also lead to issues.
Let me guess.
The 6-group monks again. This time they started painting figures on the monastery walls. Ithirupaka, Purasarpaka figures of women and men.
Oh dear. How did that go down?
Predictably badly. Lay people saw it and complained, "This is just like householders enjoying sensual displays." It wasn't considered appropriate for a monastery.
So figurative art was out.
Human figures were prohibited. The Buddha allowed only certain decorative patterns, floral designs, creeper or vine motifs, makara dantaka, which means makara tooth patterns, the makara being a mythical sea creature, a common motif, and panyakapihika, simple 5-struct patterns.
So decoration was okay, but it had to be abstract or symbolic, not representational of humans.
Exactly. It maintained that sense of renunciation and detachment from worldly forms, while still allowing for some beautification. Again, public image and monastic identity were key.
What about more structural things? Privacy, safety?
Big concerns as communities grew. Some early viharas were built in low-lying areas and would flood during the rainy season.
Not good.
Not good at all. So the Buddha approved building on raised foundations, pidapade, and using more durable materials like bricks, stones, or wood for construction.
Moving up from mud and thatch.
Progressively, yes. But raised buildings meant you needed a way to get up to them. So stairs, sopanada, were approved, and eventually handrails, allocation for safety on the stairs.
Logical progression. What about privacy inside?
That became a big issue too. Initially, many viharas seem to have been quite open inside, maybe large halls. The text says they were open to view, which caused embarrassment for the monks.
Yeah, you need some personal space.
Right. So first, tirakanas were approved. These were likely simple partitions or screens, but people could still peek over them,
Nosy neighbors, even in monasteries.
apparently. So the next step was approving ashakutake half walls. But even then, maybe people stood on things to look over, because finally, fully enclosed rooms, gab, were approved. 3 types were mentioned, perhaps varying in size or function.
So private rooms became the standard.
It seems so, yes. And there were even rules about efficient space, use how to arrange rooms, like having a central room in large viharas versus side rooms in smaller ones.
They really thought about architectural planning.
They did. And ongoing maintenance, too. Rules came in for Cullavagga, which was probably wall skirting or a protective base for walls, and using lime plaster, sudukama, to protect walls from decay and rain damage.
Lime plaster, that's quite advanced.
It is. And there's another story about a monk being scared when a snake fell from the grass roof.
To snakes again.
Always the snakes. This incident led to the approval of Vitani ceilings to stop things falling from the roof space.
Every rule seems to have a story, a practical reason behind it.
Almost always, yes. Even small things, like storage. Monks used to hang their bags on the legs of their beds.
I'm not attracted.
Rodents. So, to avoid that, wall pegs, puthikola, were approved. And even fancier ones called nagadantaka, elephant tusk pegs, which probably projected further from the wall.
Clever. What about storing robes?
Putting robes on beds or chairs could damage them. So kivaravasa, clothes rods made of bamboo or wood, were approved. And also kivardaj, clothes ropes, for hanging robes properly.
Just creating an organized, functional living space.
Exactly. A space conducive to the practice, minimizing distractions and difficulties.
What about shared spaces beyond the dwellings? Like where they ate or gathered?
Yes, common areas were crucial. Monks eating outside would get wet in the rain or too hot in the sun.
Right, you need some shelter.
So the approval came for alandai, verandas, pagana, porches or entrance halls, and osarakai, covered walkways.
Adding extensions to the main buildings?
Seems like it. But even these could be exposed sometimes, maybe to driving rain or wind. So sliding and folding screens were approved for these areas too.
Adaptable shelter. And eating specifically.
A dedicated service hall, Upananasala, was approved specifically for meals, and it had similar structural rules applied to it as the viharas, proper foundations, walls, roofs. Communal eating was clearly important.
Water, too. You mentioned drinking water getting hot.
Yes, so Panyasala, drinking water halls, and Panyamanchapad, drinking water booths or pavilions, were approved to keep water cool and accessible. Specific drinking vessels were also regulated.
And keeping the grounds clean. Fires.
Monks were apparently making cooking or warming fires anywhere in the courtyards, which probably made a mess and was maybe unsafe. So a separate, dedicated fire hall, Ajisale, was approved, centralizing that activity.
Okay, very organized. What about the boundaries of the whole monastery complex?
Initially, grounds were often unfenced. This led to problems with animals wandering in, causing damage, maybe disturbing the monks.
So fences became necessary.
Yes. Approval was given for various types of fences or boundary markers. Brick walls, stone walls, wooden fences, bamboo fences, thorn hedges, even digging ditches, whatever is practical locally.
And gates.
Absolutely. With fences come gates. So kohako, gatehouses, were approved, complete with their own doors and security measures like bars and locks, creating a secure, defined monastic precinct.
It's incredible how comprehensive this system became, covering almost every aspect of communal living.
It really is. And this brings us to maybe one of the most fundamental aspects, how people actually got along within this structure, rules for respect and seniority.
Ah, yes. Living together isn't just about buildings, it's about relationships. Was this an issue?
It certainly became one, especially with, guess who?
The 6-group monks.
Bingo. They were apparently taking the best dwellings for themselves, grabbing the best seats at gatherings, even displacing senior venerable monks like Sariputta, one of the Buddha's chief disciples, showing clear disrespect.
That wouldn't foster harmony. How did the Buddha address it?
He used a very powerful teaching story, the Tatira Jataka, the story of the quail. He asked who truly deserved the Agasane Agarika Agapishda, highest seat, the first serving of water, the first portion of food.
And the story illustrates the answer.
Beautifully. It tells of a quail, a monkey, and an elephant living together near a large banyan tree. They were friends, but realized they lacked proper order and respect among themselves.
So how did they establish seniority?
They decided to base it on who had known the banyan tree the longest. The elephant remembered when the tree was just a small bush he could step over. The monkey remembered when it was just a sapling no higher than himself.
And the quail.
The quail, the smallest of the three, said, "Friends, long ago, there was a huge banyan tree in a certain place. I ate one of its fruits, flew here, and passed my droppings at this very spot. This tree grew from that seed."
Wow, so the quail was effectively the founder of the tree.
Exactly. He was recognized as the oldest and wisest based on that deep memory and connection. The monkey and elephant then showed him the highest respect.
What a great story. And the moral for the monks.
Clear as day. If even animals can live together respecting seniority based on wisdom and experience, then monks certainly should. This led directly to formal rules about showing respect based on seniority specifically, the date of ordination.
So the longer you'd been ordained, the more seniority you had.
Generally, yes, there were specific rules. Younger monks should stand when an elder approaches, offer their seat, fetch water for them, though practical allowances were made, like being allowed to sit while studying together, even if a senior monk was present.
Were there exceptions? People you didn't have to show formal respect to?
Yes, the text lists 10 categories of individuals who were not to be saluted in the formal monastic way. This included, reflecting the social norms of the time, women, eunuchs, those undergoing certain monastic penalties, and others.
And who was to be saluted?
3 main categories. Someone more senior in ordination, someone of equal seniority in certain contexts, and of course, the Buddha himself was always to be saluted.
Were there practical limits? Like how close in seniority could you be to sit together?
Yes, there was a rule about similar seniority. Monks ordained within 3 years of each other could generally sit together without strict deference. And another very practical rule, beds and chairs should only hold 2 people,
Why only 2?
because apparently when larger groups sat on them, they broke.
Huh. Simple physics.
Exactly. And there were also rules about who could not sit on a long bench together with monks again. Categories like eunuchs, women, and hermaphrodites were excluded, likely to maintain monastic decorum and boundaries.
Okay, so rules for behavior, respect. What about managing the actual property, the land, the buildings, the stuff? This seems really complex.
It is. And a crucial teaching came about regarding property ownership. There was an incident where some monks living in a monastery didn't want to accommodate visiting monks.
Didn't want guests. Why?
Maybe it was inconvenient, maybe resources were scarce. Whatever the reason, they tried to get around their obligation by giving away communal property, perhaps pretending it wasn't theirs to share.
Trying to find a loophole.
Seems like it. But the Buddha clamped down on this firmly. He established that 5 categories of Sangha property are avisajjhani, they absolutely cannot be given away, and abhapaggyani, they cannot be divided up among individuals.
And what were these 5 sacred categories?
1. The monastery grounds, arama, and the site itself, aramavatu. 2. The dwellings, vihara, and their sites, viharavatu. 3. Furniture like beds, manyika, chairs, manses, bisi, and pillows, bimbohana. 4. Metal items like pots, knives, tools, lohakumbi, etc. And 5. Building materials derived from vines or clay, balibub, madikavach. Basically, the essential infrastructure and durable goods. Exactly. The core assets of the monastery. He stated that even if someone tries to give these away or divide them, the transaction is invalid. It remains Sangha property. And attempting to do so incurs a thulakaya, a serious offense.
That's a really strong statement about the permanence and communal nature of monastic property, ensuring it stays for the future Sangha.
Absolutely key. And if property is permanent, it needs maintenance. This led to the formalization of Navakama repair and construction work.
How did that system get set up?
Through another story, actually. A poor tailor in Vesali had become a monk and was trying to build a wall for the monastery. But being poor, he couldn't get the resources or help he needed. He complained that there was no system to support monks undertaking such necessary work.
A valid complaint.
It was. And it led the Buddha to approve the appointment of a specific role. The Navakamiko Bhikkhu, the repair work assigner. Someone officially responsible for overseeing construction and repairs.
So a project manager, essentially.
You could call it that. And specific rules came with the role. Repair work could only be assigned for monasteries that were unfinished or incomplete. And there were time limits based on the size of the building.
Time limits for repairs.
Yes. 5 to 6 years allowed for supervising work on a small vihara, 7 to 8 years for an akayoga or pasada, half cell or mansion, and 10 to 12 years for large viharas or pasadas.
That seems quite long.
It suggests these could be major projects, maybe done incrementally as resources allowed. And there were even more complex rules about what happened if the monk assigned to the project left the order, died, or committed a serious offense midway through.
What happened then?
Generally, if the project was incomplete, it reverted fully to the Sangha to manage. If it was completed, it was usually considered the monk's responsibility or achievement, unless there was a very severe breach of conduct, in which case the Sangha might take control. It shows a surprisingly sophisticated legal and administrative framework developing.
Absolutely. It feels less like just spiritual guidance and more like community governance.
It had to be, for the community to function. And this need for administration became even clearer during a famine in Rajagaha.
How did famine lead to more administration?
Well, during the famine, people started offering more diverse types of food to the monks, whatever they could manage. This variety meant that simply dividing up the main alms food wasn't enough for fair distribution.
You needed someone to manage the porridge, someone for the fruit.
Exactly. The need for fair distribution of different items prompted the Buddha to establish a whole range of administrative roles for monks.
Can you give some examples? What kinds of jobs were there?
Oh, quite a few. There was the Batudasako, the meal assigner or distributor, the Senāsanakkhandhaka, who assigned dwellings to monks, the Banchagoriko, the storekeeper or treasurer.
Okay, those make sense.
Then you had the Kyvarapayakako, who received donations of robes, and the Kyvarabachako, who distributed them fairly. Specific distributors for porridge, Yaguvijako, fruit, Faldifijako, and snacks or dry foods, Kachvabachaka.
Getting very specific now.
Doesn't stop there. There was even a Apamanakabisachaka, someone who distributed small, necessary items like needles, knives, sandals, small tools, basic provisions like butter, oil, honey.
Wow, they really covered all the bases.
They did. And assigners for robes, Kveverpizaka, bowls, Patapazakai, even someone to direct the monastery workers, Haramikapizako, and the novices, Simichopizako.
An entire organizational chart.
Pretty much. And crucially, the Buddha stressed that anyone appointed to these roles had to be qualified. They needed to be free from the 4 kinds of bias. Bias driven by desire, chandagati, by aversion, dosagati, by delusion, mohagati, or by fear, bhagati.
Impartiality was key.
Absolutely. And they also had to actually know what they were doing, knowledgeable in their specific task. It was about competence and fairness.
This whole system is just incredibly detailed. It really provides the structure for everything else.
It does. And perhaps the grandest example of this structure being put into practice, involving donation, construction, and organization, is the story of Anathapindika and the Jetavana Monastery.
Yes, Anathapindika, one of the most famous lay disciples. How does his story fit in here?
It starts when he, a wealthy merchant from Savatthi, was visiting Rajagaha on business. He heard his host mention the name Buddha, and the text says he became profoundly excited just hearing the name.
He hadn't met him yet.
No, but he felt this immediate connection. He was so eager to meet the Buddha that he woke up 3 times during the night thinking it was already dawn.
Couldn't wait.
Couldn't wait. And when he finally set out before dawn to go to the Siddhavana Grove where the Buddha was staying, he had this dramatic encounter in the darkness.
What happened?
He met a yaksha, a nature spirit named Savako. Anathapindika got scared, but the yaksha encouraged him, saying, "Go forward, householder. Going forward is better for you than turning back." And then he added that a single step taken towards the Buddha was worth more than immense wealth, more than 100,000 cows or horses.
Wow. High praise even from a spirit.
Indeed, it emphasizes the spiritual significance of seeking out the Buddha. So Anathapindika pressed on.
And his meeting with the Buddha?
It was immediate rapport. The Buddha addressed him by his birth name, Sudatta, which surprised him. He listened to the teachings, had a profound spiritual realization right there, and took refuge, becoming a devoted follower.
Instantly converted.
Pretty much. And his first act was generosity. He invited the Buddha and the Sangha for a meal the next day. Others in Rajagaha, wealthy patrons themselves, offered to help pay, but Anathapindika humbly insisted on bearing the entire cost himself.
Showing his devotion.
Yes. But he had an even bigger vision. He invited the Buddha to come to his home city of Savatthi for the rainy season retreat.
And the Buddha accepted.
He indicated he would, but added that Tathakas, the Buddhas, prefer empty dwellings, sunyagara.
A subtle hint.
A very subtle hint. Anathapindika immediately understood. It meant he needed to provide a suitable, quiet place for the Sangha in Savatthi. He needed to build a monastery.
And this leads to the famous Jetavana story.
Exactly. He returned to Savatthi and searched for the perfect location, peaceful, accessible, but not too close to the city. He found a beautiful pleasure grove belonging to Prince Jeta.
Jeta's Grove, Jetavana.
Right. He asked Prince Jeta to sell it. The prince wasn't keen. It was his favorite retreat. He apparently joked, "It's not for sale unless you can cover the entire ground with gold coins."
A ridiculous price meant to put him off.
That was the intention. But Anathapindika was incredibly wealthy and incredibly devout.
Yeah.
He took the prince literally.
He didn't.
He did. He ordered carts loaded with gold coins to be brought, and his servants started laying them out edge to edge, covering the ground of the grove. This is the famous Kusantara, the gold spreading.
I can't even imagine that scene. What did Prince Jeta do?
He was utterly astonished. Seeing this level of devotion and determination, realizing the spiritual significance of what Anathapindika was doing, he had a change of heart. He stopped him before the entire grove was covered, saying, "Enough, householder, let the ground that is covered be yours. But the remaining part, near the entrance gatehouse, Kuhaka, let that be my donation."
Wow. So the prince joined in the merit-making too.
Yes, he recognized the profound value of the gift and wanted to contribute. So the grove became known as Anathapindika's monastery in Jeta's Grove.
And Anathapindika didn't just buy the land, right? He developed it.
Oh, yes. He then spent another fortune building a state-of-the-art monastic center there. The text lists everything he built. Viharas, dwellings, parivensa, residential cells or quarters, kuhak, gatehouses, upihanasalo, service halls, agisala, fire halls, storehouses, lavatories, places for walking meditation, kamana, wells, bathhouses, jantagara, ponds, and pavilions.
A fully equipped campus.
Absolutely. It became one of the primary places where the Buddha spent his rainy season retreats and delivered many discourses. It was a model of monastic infrastructure, all funded by Anathapindika's incredible generosity.
And like the first donor, he dedicated it broadly.
Yes, he dedicated Jetavan to the Sangha of the four directions, present and future, ensuring it remained communal property for all time. The Buddha continually praised such acts of generosity, highlighting how supporting the Sangha with material requisites like dwellings was a highly meritorious deed.
It really ties everything together. The need for structure, the role of lay support, the detailed administration, all serving the ultimate spiritual purpose.
Exactly. So, looking back, we've really managed to uncover the whole story today, haven't we? Or at least a big part of it.
I think so. We've seen how this early Buddhist community wasn't just floating on spiritual ideals. It was deeply engaged in establishing these pragmatic, constantly evolving systems for just daily living, for managing property, for ensuring communal harmony.
It's a powerful testament to human ingenuity and adaptability, even within, maybe especially within, a spiritual context.
Yeah.
These weren't just abstract rules handed down. They grew directly from lived experience.
From leaky roofs and pesky rodents and boundary disputes.
Right up to the grandest donations and the complexities of administration and ensuring fairness. These rules, born from real-world problems and the Buddha's incredibly responsive wisdom, literally shaped the practical contours of monastic life for centuries.
It shows a tradition that was alive, dynamic, constantly adapting to the needs of its members, not static at all.
Not at all. From the details of a door lock or a pillow size up to the principles of communal ownership and respectful coexistence, it's the practical foundation that allowed the spiritual path to actually be walked by a community.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into ancient monastic living, maybe the thought to leave with is this. What does this meticulous attention to practical detail, this constant adaptation within the early Sangha, teach us about our own lives, our own communities today?
It's a great question. Perhaps it suggests that even the loftiest ideals need solid, sometimes very humble foundations. And maybe true wisdom often lies less in grand pronouncements and more in the quiet art of figuring out how to live well together day by day, one practical rule, one small adaptation at a time.
Makes you wonder, what rules are our own communities creating or needing to adapt right now to meet the unforeseen challenges of living together? Food for thought.